Hey JP, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Eric. Yourself?
Good. Thanks for being able to jump on a brief call. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Keeping busy. I know there are many questions from shareholders regarding the overall progress, and I know there's certain things that you can't talk about right now because of SEC regulations, but I did want to get your response from some of the thoughts and concerns of shareholders, some that were
Sure.
emailed to me. All right. So there are many that think the only ones doing the lockup will be predominantly insiders, as they are presumably holding it as legacy stock, and it's an easy way for them to get more ILUS shares or subsidiary shares. And many think that people are going to be reluctant to lock up shares because of the price action, and that many people are just waiting to break even, and then they're going to just sell off. So my question is, will the lockup be available to all shareholders? And do you think this is going to have a significant impact both for the company and will it finally reflect in the share price?
So firstly, it's a planned lockup, Eric, and secondly, yes, of course, it would be available to all shareholders. Um, I'm not quite sure what they're referring to regarding it mostly being taken up by insiders, bearing in mind there's very few of those in our ranks. Um, we're certainly here for the long term. So yeah, in terms of the plans, it's as we've said many, many times, right? It's a planned lockup. It would be available to all shareholders. We do believe it would be hugely beneficial for ILUS and those involved, but obviously we can't make promises in that regard at this stage, right? So of course, I don't think anyone at any stage would be able to make promises in that regard. I think people who do their research would know what the benefits of a lockup would be, and if they don't know, they certainly shouldn't be remotely even nearly involved in a lockup if they're not aware of what is happening and what the potential benefits are, what the upside is, and all of that. Does that clarify?
It does. So all right, I just want to make sure that people understand that. So everybody is going to be able to have that option to lock up shares.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. So that is clear. In your last update, I believe the quote was that you were aiming to provide maximum consecutive value for shareholders. That is a line that stuck out with and resonated with many of us. What did you mean by that? And are you able to elaborate a little bit more on that at this time?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've said many times that the timing of a lockup, and bear in mind, let me just remind you, Eric, that it's a planned lockup, right? Right now, we have plans to do a lockup. Now, looking at everything we are working on at the moment, you know, we can expect those plans to move forward. But at this stage, it's a planned lockup. I cannot state in this forum that we are doing a lockup. That would obviously happen via the appropriate channels, press release, 8Ks, things like that. That would be 100% material information. So just bear that in mind, right? Um, yeah. So in terms of the benefits, the plans, yeah. I mean, as I said, there's huge upside. What else would you like me to clarify?
Basically, what it means for maximum consecutive value. Pretty much
Yeah. So
like is are you referring basically to possible, like if there were to be subsidiaries that were to be spun off in getting certain shares for certain subsidiaries or something along those lines?
yeah, again, and we did touch on this at the shareholders meeting. The lockup would have to be done, in our opinion. It could be done right now, right? We could do a lockup right now. Would it be the optimal time right now to do a lockup? Some people might say yes. It's certainly debatable. Some people, and again, those who know what we're planning or what we're trying to achieve as a company would also agree with us that right now is not the most optimal time to do a lockup, but very soon potentially would be the optimal time to do a lockup. What would make it most optimal to do a lockup? Something like, for example, a planned uplist, right? If something is coming to fruition in that regard, that would potentially be an optimal time just prior to that to be doing something in regards to a lockup, right? So it's factors like that. There's other factors that would also influence the success of a lockup. And for us, just doing it because a lot of people are telling us to do it, or believing we should doing it, or do it, or saying we should doing it, emailing us, telling us to do it. That doesn't constitute a good enough reason. We know the plans that we're working on. We know exactly what's coming to fruition in the near term, medium term, long term. So combined with all of that, we believe we're working on a route that gives shareholders the optimal value, the maximum value out of that share, out of that lockup. Does that
Right
make
on.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Right on. Total. And you know what? I want to say to my viewers, I am not on video today. So JP, you're actually, we're usually in the flow of actually being on video, but I'm not on video today. So thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate that, sir.
No problem. No
Um,
problem.
so many have been slinging comments around regarding the lack of follow through. I know from a shareholder's perspective, we look at things through a completely different lens that you guys do. I want to share with you a quote from a concerned shareholder. Even today, people are still wondering if the QIND deal truly closed, or is there an issue? What is the status of their misspray or their commercial kitchen fire extinguisher or their drone company? Which goes back to my original question and my first email to you, which is what he sent to me. Um, have they ever been successful completed? Have they ever successfully completed anything in the past pre-ILUS? So you could just sort of sense some of the sentiment here. What can you say regarding the clarity of progress and the communication to shareholders regarding these issues?
Yeah, I think firstly, let me just say, we very much understand the frustration that many shareholders experience. I mean, primarily based on the share price, right? Of course, we ourselves are frustrated in that regard. So, and many people will say, well, we don't feel the same pain and this and that. There's not too much to say, Eric, other than I can just vouch for the fact that we ourselves are very frustrated with that in relation to the company. Many people will tout things on social media saying that the company is not the share price, or the share price is not the company, and so on and so forth. But for us, we really feel that frustration. Obviously, we get a lot of people emailing, contacting us, and we can see it for ourselves. We put a huge amount of effort into this company. We've built a really successful company in a short space of time, and that's just not translating right now in the share price. And I can understand reasons why, but I just wanted to say, we also understand that frustration. We ourselves are very frustrated. And coming back to delivering, and there was a number of different aspects to that question, but we've accomplished a huge amount. And let's just go back to the beginning. Let's take a look at what did we forecast. I'm not sure if you would recall this, Eric, but what did we forecast at the beginning of 2022 in terms of our revenue for the year? I'm not sure if you would recall, but round about early February, we forecasted run rate revenue of 40 to 55 million. So 11th of February, that press release came out, and I'd urge people to read that press release. Right now, we delivered just short of 80 million in 2022. Right, so that's roughly 500% growth. I haven't actually done the sums, more than what we had mentioned at the annual shareholders meeting. So just shy of 80 million in revenue. We're a company with just short of $200 million in assets. And we've accomplished that in the space of the last year, pretty much, right? 2 years in total. So I can understand that what people will point to is things like Serbia, that deal, which is still ongoing, by the way, fully approved by the Serbian government. We can walk into Serbia tomorrow if we want to. If it was the ideal thing for us as a business, we would do that. But anyway, I've digressed. So back to the forecasts as a company in terms of what we've done as a company. We've had to make decisions along the way in terms of what we would deliver by when. And we felt that building a very strong, laying a solid foundation for the company with assets, with revenue in place so that we could have that springboard to grow off into the future was the ideal route forward for us. So we pursued the various deals to give us the nearly $80 million in revenue. So if you come towards the latter half of the year, We then revised our forecast to talk about $140 million in run rate revenue. So we revised it, we increased our forecast, right? Now we achieved that. We literally only just achieved that in the fourth quarter. So you'll see it's not long before the 10K comes out, and then so we've done, from our perspective, there's a lot that we've succeeded in the last year. There is also areas where of course we're not satisfied, right? And I mentioned Serbia. Some things did not go as planned. They're still ongoing. They've not fallen away. But hey, presto, in the meantime, you're involved in a company that has grown 500% in the last year. That's despite a number of things not going according to plan and things like that. So I think it's a pretty darn good investment from that point of view. Now, we're quite confident that we'll take the company beyond $200 million in revenue in 2023. We've done it in 2022. I'm pretty confident we'll do it in 2023. So that's the company that people are invested in. Now, I can understand why, again, there's frustration, why there's disappointment. We feel that same pain. In terms of delivering, what was mentioned there, Eric, Vera drones?
Yes. Well, Vera was mentioned, but could you actually, I want to talk a little bit about QIND. Yeah. Could you talk about the tranche payments, just to clarify? A lot of people think that the deal isn't happening, it's off the table. Could you just clarify to some people that may be confused, and explain to them, and maybe, I don't want to say the word dumb it down, but like explain it like 101 style, how this tranche system is going to work, and is QIND just waiting for the signatures?
Yeah, I mean, I find it quite, I don't know if it's hilarious or just plain sad, but I myself am quite confused when people will spend the time, taking to Twitter, posting various things, or taking to whatever medium to posting various things, as opposed to just reading the 8K, just reading the attachment on the 8K, read the terms. What does it say? It says, upon execution of the closing documents on or before the 18th of January, 2023, and so on and so forth. I don't have it in front of me now, but I can tell you that's what it says, right? So the closing documents were a number of documents. The shareholders agreement, the escrow agreement, was the board resignations and appointments. Those are three sets of documents that we felt, and by when I say we, both parties, Quality International and ourselves, felt we could achieve the closing of those documents, the execution of those closing documents, by the 18th of January 2023. We did not achieve that. Why? Because it's mountains of paperwork and we were overly optimistic. Both parties were overly optimistic in the execution of those closing documents. They have now since been executed, by the way, and we were in a position to pay the second tranche payment prior to signing the share purchase agreement. That funding was already arranged, and there was term sheets and things like that signed prior to the share purchase agreement being signed. So for all those people who were upset about the delay in the signing of the share purchase agreement, that was primarily because we were getting all of our ducks in a row prior to signing. We didn't react because of people telling us we needed to get certain things done by certain dates. We followed the process that we needed to follow. We got everything agreed, everything properly in place. We signed the share purchase agreement. Then we began working on the various documents from there on. That's the various closing documents. As I said, those have since been completed, executed, and just look out for the various communications through the appropriate channels, 8K, press release, things like that. So I can understand why people might, for example, get that confused. They just see a date, and then a date is a date. Well, if you read further, you will see that there's a couple of things linked to the date. You would also see that there's nothing in regards to a breach if that date was not met. The important thing is that we get a shareholders agreement in place that governs how we operate together as shareholders of the company, smoothly going forward. This is a $270 million company. It's a company with over $150 million in current purchase orders. Its pipeline is ridiculous, and now should we just bow down to a bunch of people that are saying, this must be done, tell us about this, tell us about it? No, we're running a $270 million company, and we have to do that properly. That falls flat if it's not done properly long after most shareholders involved in this company may still be around. The people in particular that complain, the ones that are raising all the noise, are not people that will be around in 2 years' time when we're still running a company, when I'm still having to sit on the board of that company and agree operational matters with that company. Right? Sorry, I know I've digressed a fair bit, but people need to understand this is real business. This is not speculation about a merger coming into an OTC company. This is a real company that's been around for a long time, and we have to run it properly. And I'm not going to sit and sign things for the sake of someone spouting nonsense on Twitter. It's just not going to happen. We're running a proper business. We've built a proper business in a fairly short period of time. And if we don't pay special attention to every little detail, we'll fall flat as a company. So we're not making those mistakes because of public pressure. So I'm hoping I've made myself clear in that regard. There's a lot more to it than that. But as I said, those documents have been executed. We're not going to be rushed. Even the Quality International board was not going to be rushed. I'm taking a seat on that board. I'm going to be chairman of that board. We've got a strong team around me. We have to do things properly. We're just not going to be, rushed for the sake of people pushing us. Ultimately, you would thank us, and I think the long-term shareholders would thank us, and I think all shareholders would thank us for doing it the appropriate way and making sure that we've got rock solid foundations underneath us as we push forward.
Right on.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I like to hear that you guys are being thorough. And you could tell it's just people get antsy and people just like it is what it is. People get antsy and they just want instantaneous results. And like you said, like I said, the lens where we're coming from and you are at is completely different. And by the way, if you do look up that document, I believe there are 6 tranches, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, it looks like you guys are obviously doing what you need to do. So listen, I've been a shareholder, now for almost 2 years, and I see the progress that you guys have made. I truly do. But I can also see that you've adapted and pivoted when you've had to. And I understand that many things are affected by the geopolitical climate and many things that, come and go, in the world. So my question is, when are we going to finally see these sacrifices come full circle for the long-term shareholder? And you sort of alluded to that a little bit. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so I'll answer that shortly. Just to say, you mentioned the tranche payments 4, 5, and 6. Those are the 3 tranche payments that have a breach attached to them, right? If we're late on those payments by more than 30 days, there's a breach attached to those. Tranche payments 2 and 3 do not have a breach attached to them because certainly in the case of tranche 2, as I mentioned, both parties are working towards something. And we had a date pegged in of 18th of January. As I said, those documents have since now been executed, and look out for the 8Ks. But again, there was no breach in relation to it. And just to clarify again, funding was agreed prior to signing the share purchase agreement. And so I just wanted to mention that now. We're working through all of those processes. In terms of the long-term shareholders, it's very difficult for me to say when. Eric, you understand that I can tell you when. I'd love to tell you when I believe certain things will happen that will hugely benefit long-term shareholders, but that's really not a question I can answer in this forum. Again, and I apologize because I desperately want to be able to tell you. I'm so excited about so many things. You might have picked that up in the last podcast that I did. And I know that frustrates people because they hear my excitement or they hear me say something about being excited, and then they want to hear some news off the back of that. And I understand that. It's me just putting various viewpoints across. But in terms of saying when, I'd be probably in big trouble if I mentioned when, specifically when there would be substantial benefits for long-term shareholders. As I said in the last podcast, it was really to emphasize just keep a close eye on what we're doing. There is news coming. Certainly, we are working on some big things, and I think if you followed us as a company, Nick and myself and our team, we typically go from strength to strength. We're certainly not taking steps back in terms of our ambition, in terms of what we are looking to achieve as a company. We've spoken about taking ILUS to a big board, and we are very much in the thick of working on that. And as I said in the last podcast, there is various things coming to fruition, and we will put out the important news in that regard as soon as we can. And unfortunately, I can't say when, Eric. But as I said, just, keep a close eye on us.
I gotta ask one more question. I want to follow up real quick. With ERT. So that you guys are potentially working on something. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty juicy. I want to know, is something still on the table with ERT, with a potential acquisition that would put ILUS on the map?
Correct. Yes. So we are working on a large acquisition. We have been for some time. It is of a US company, and again, as I mentioned in my podcast, it is a time sensitive deal. It is one that we've needed to move pretty quickly on. It's a company with a substantial order book, good revenue to boot. A really good solid deal for us actually as a company too. So we are working on that. And yeah, again, I know everyone just wants to hear about when certain things will come to fruition. It's just not a question I can answer, or it's not something I can speak about in this forum, to be honest. But it is something that is very exciting for us as a business, primarily because not only because of revenue and order books, which is something we already have in our group, but primarily because it puts us on the map in the US in a huge way, and it gives us that prime foundation to launch our Firebug products into the US, which we are doing in a much smaller sense at the moment. This obviously is that it's a huge springboard into that US market, which I know is hugely important for our US shareholders and North American shareholders and the like. So for us, we would see the opportunity to take that company more globally. We would see the opportunity to bring some of our more disruptive technology beyond just people think of the water mist technology only. It's not only about the water mist technology, it's about bringing the lightweight copolymer technology for rapid response vehicles into the US market. I don't want to digress too much from the question because I can talk for hours about firefighting and that side of the business, but really for us, we look at the US market, it's governed a lot. The US firefighting market is governed a lot by tradition. We've been through a lot of this before, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but the vehicles are heavy, they're slow, they're inefficient, they're expensive, and we have technology which changes all of that. And obviously coming in with a company that is globally known, but certainly a dominant player in the US market with those brands that are dominant in the US market, or certainly top tier brands in the US market, having that as our platform to then push the Firebug technology, whether it's through another brand into the US market or whether it's through Firebug itself, is irrelevant as long as the technology gets to market. Yeah, again, I said I wasn't going to digress, and I probably have, but there is just so much to that deal, which is hugely exciting for ERT. And of course, it catapults ERT forward, right? So yeah, a very exciting deal there. And there's a few, but that's one of the main ones.
That's great. I just had to ask. I know you and I are both pressed for time right now. So that makes me excited. All right. So sure. to be continued. JP, thanks for being able to hop on a quick call. I really look forward to talking to you as things progress more. Yeah.
Do you have a quick moment? You asked something about Vera drones, and I feel like that's something that's probably been missed. I know you've got to get back to
yeah, you know what? And it's funny because you did already explain Vera multiple times, and so that's why it wasn't at the forefront of my brain right now. So if you want to re-explain what's going on there for people that are a little concerned about that.
Yeah, for those who want a more detailed response, it was covered, I think, in enough detail at our annual shareholders meeting, so they could go back to our ILUS YouTube channel and play that back. But just to say, we signed to acquire Vera drones. We have the documentation for that. We can produce that at any time if needed. And as I mentioned at the annual shareholders meeting, we walked away from that particular acquisition for several reasons. One of them being the war which commenced in Ukraine, or the conflict in Ukraine. And Vera Drones has Russian ownership. So I mentioned that at the annual shareholders meeting. So I don't think I need to go into too much detail around that. But as a company which is, bidding for government contracts in all areas of the world, has a defense subsidiary which we're looking to build, which we're in the process of building, that has target acquisitions that have US government contracts, for example, UK MOD government contracts. We cannot be seen to be doing business with a Russian company, and we certainly wouldn't be. We wouldn't. So it's not something we would want to be involved in. We spotted that the moment Russia invaded Ukraine, and so we had to take necessary steps. There's more to it than that. Ultimately, all I can say is, had we moved forward with that deal, not only would it have caused us those sort of geopolitical type of issues, it would have caused issues with our bids for business, but I think we also would have spent a huge amount of money and not seen any revenue in return as of yet. And I think, in fact, I believe, and again, this is my opinion, we would have invested a lot of funds and not seen return, certainly for a few years, 3 to even 5 years, in that sense. And that was, as we dive deeper into things, that's what we learned, and so we chose to walk away from it. So again, I explained it more clearly in the annual shareholders meeting, but I think, as I said earlier, we chose to pursue, rock solid foundations. We chose, in that, to acquire companies with strong revenue, strong assets. I've laid it, I feel, we've laid a rock solid foundation to build on going forward. And again, you have to go, so I don't want to talk too long. But hopefully that's clear that we have a good platform now to build off. There's very, very exciting things coming. I know you're asking when. I can just say soon, and that's it.
And that's right. And I just took another ILUS timeline pill, so that's totally fine. I love the updates, I gotta say. But you know what? And I'm looking forward to connect to you more. And you really mentioned something. I just want to finish with this, guys. If you're watching this, take initiative. Do not believe what you find on StockTwits, Twitter. Even if I put a video out, check me. All right. Look at 8Ks, look at Form 10s. And like JP just said, the annual shareholder meeting is there. Don't speculate off of speculation of what it was said during the annual shareholder meeting. If you're really invested, if you are really concerned, just listen to the damn thing. I can't tell that to my followers enough. Just go right to the source. If you're concerned about the share structure of a company, go to otcmarkets.com and look it up. It's all right there. The information is readily available. So, JP, awesome to have you on. And next time I'm going to make you look at my mug. All right.
Yeah. And just to add, Eric, and also people are welcome to email us, right? So ir@ilus-group.com or info@ilus-group.com. Both those emails, I have visibility of both of those, and the rest of my team does. So, we will respond. If there's a serious question being asked, we will gladly respond. We endeavor to always keep doing that.
Awesome. JP, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.